Okay. All right. So this is a special meeting and continuation of the regular Board of County Commissioner meeting from Monday, April 20th, 2020. Do we have an approval of the agenda? At this point, I think I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda to add under number 3 as number 4, the revised public health order. Commissioner Glenn and Commissioner Mudge, do you have any thoughts on that? Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Kayla. I can hear you. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I did have my
Oh, that's okay.
computer muted.
So I'd like to approve the agenda with the addition of number 4 being the amended public health order discussion. So I will make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of number 4, discussion around new public health order.
Second?
Okay. Is there any further discussion from the board, Commissioner Glenn?
I have nothing.
Okay. With no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we will add number 4 to the agenda, which is discussion around the newest public health order. Okay, so at this point, if you will raise your hand in the chat area of the meeting so that we can call on you if you do have public comments, that would be great. Actually, I'm sorry. We'll move into community informational items first. Commissioner Marcella, I have none. Just want to relay my gratitude to our first responders and healthcare workers and grocery store workers for their continued hard work and efforts into keeping our community functioning. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. Commissioner Mudge, do you have anything to add?
Oh, yeah, okay. I just want to say that through, you know, the last week we've gotten some phone calls from businesses and other constituents and community members. And again, I just want to reiterate that, you know, I think all of us at each level share the frustration in the challenge of communication. And it is, you know, we are also experiencing that on a local government level of information coming down from the state. Things are moving very quickly, and once we seem and feel to get into a groove or an understanding of, you know, available resources, things shift and change, and then we're looking at kind of a new format. So I thank everyone in the organization and in our community for the patience that we all need to be giving each other through this, and also know that all of us are doing our best to better organize that, continue to better organize that moving forward. We should be getting, we'll be talking in the next day and a half of getting kind of recovery tasks teams together, improving a dashboard and posting something online, getting, you know, continuing to improve posting of planners and meetings and that kind of information. But we're all kind of wading through the landscape together as it changes. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Glenn?
I have nothing.
All right, so moving on, do we have any commissioner clarifications at this point, Commissioner Glenn or Commissioner Mudge?
I have none.
Nope.
Okay. Public comments on items not on the agenda. If you have a public comment for items not on the agenda, can you please raise your hand in the chat function and we will be able to call on you individually so that we can allow you your opportunity to speak. I don't, Amit or Sarah, I think one of you are the host of the meeting. Can either of you see if anyone has raised their hand for public comment on items not on the agenda?
I think Amit, if he is preoccupied trying to get another cancellation of the misinformation posted on the planner, though the phone number is working on the planner.
Uh-huh.
So
The phone number
he's not
is
able to respond at this moment. I don't think,
okay.
yeah, I don't see a hand raised, and I am not sure that I may be the co-host, but right now he is the host since we are trying to go into executive session at one point, and I will be hosting that one. So I cannot see a hand raised at this point.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm here. Amit here, and no one is raising their hands, and I had made Sarah the host. Sarah, before you leave this meeting, just click my name in participants and make me the host.
Okay. Wonderful. Let's
All right,
see
thank you,
here.
Amit.
Patty, I do believe that you have one letter to read into the record, if that's correct, and you are able to do that now if you'd like to unmute and read that for us. Patty? Okay, Patty, you're still muted, but I think what we will do at this point, I know that you do have that letter to read into the record. So I think at this point, what we will do is we will go ahead and move forward through our agenda and come back if at the end of this for you to read that into the record.
Kayla, this is Commissioner. I
Yeah.
have a copy of that letter. I can read it into the record.
Oh, sure. If you'd like to do that, Commissioner Glenn, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, this is titled Commissioners. I am writing to you today regarding my opposition to the Board of County Commissioners taking land through an eminent domain process to build a justice center. This opposition comes in 4 parts. First, the Board of County Commissioners and Lake County government is the single largest landowner in Lake County. The idea that the Board of County Commissioners cannot find a piece of land that they already own and flagpole annex it into the city is absolutely preposterous. There is precedent within our own judicial district to flagpole annex land in order to build a justice center. The idea that the county, being the largest landowner, needs to seize private land through eminent domain is absolutely ridiculous. If you want to build a justice center, step up to the plate and use land you already own. There is no need to take privately owned land through eminent domain. Second, the piece of land you want to seize through eminent domain, the Union Pacific property located on the south end of Harrison Avenue, is wholly unsuited for this use. As you are aware, there have been deed restrictions placed on this land restricting its use. These restrictions state that the property can be used for residential development. If used for commercial use, this property can't be used for a hotel or like-type activity that would constitute people staying on the property. Given this, why do the commissioners feel that it is acceptable then to use this land for a justice center jail? If one of the goals of Lake County government is to have long-term employees of the county, and employees often spend far more time at work than any other single location in their life, why would we want employees to spend that much time somewhere when the current property owner doesn't even think it's safe for hotel guests to be there? Furthermore, we have several citizens of Lake County who spend a great deal of time incarcerated, and once a new jail is built, would basically be living at our detention center for what would be large portions of their life. Why do the commissioners feel that it is moral or just to house these citizens on a piece of land that clearly prohibits residential use when the jail will be home to some of our citizens? Third, as reported in the Herald Democrat on April 16th, Lake County government only has $661,000 in the coffers, $385,000 of which is in the general fund. An eminent domain process is a financial burden that the county cannot afford at this time. Clearly, the commissioners have not undertaken the predictive modeling that other counties and municipalities have. Not only is your sales and lodging taxes being impacted by COVID pandemic, your fee income for your county departments and your property taxes are about to be greatly impacted too. Additionally, if you have not been watching the daily Molly prices, I suggest that you do. I would start having serious conversations about what is happening up the hill at the mine and look at the letters being issued to employees. I would also establish what the bottom floor is for the mine to stay operational. What's the plan if the mine comes offline due to the continued steep decline in Molly prices due to reduced international demand? The fact that the county can't offer economic relief grants to businesses impacted by the pandemic, but can find money to seize private land through eminent domain is ludicrous. Fourth, on March 19th, the Board of County Commissioners received a cease and desist from me for the illegal, non-public, public meeting that was conducted on March 18th regarding the Justice Center. In the special meeting held on March 20th, which is available on YouTube, Commissioner Marcella, as chair of the BOCC, can clearly be heard on the video stating that the BOCC will take no action on any of the items discussed in the March 18th meeting until a transcript of that meeting was made public, as she acknowledged that citizens were barred from their right under the Colorado Open Records Act from participating in that meeting. As of today's date, that transcript has not been made public or available on the county website or any social media platforms This is in violation of the board's own supposed commitment to transparency. It is for these 4 compelling reasons that I ask that the Board of County Commissioners does not take action to approve the seizure of private land through eminent domain. Signed, Whitney Smythe Smith.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. Just to add a clarifying piece of information in there, the information that was published in the Herald Democrat last week in regards to the amount of money that is in the county's coffers, the information that was published in the legal section of the Herald Democrat is reflective of the amount of expenditures for the county government in the month of March and is not reflective of the fund balance that the county currently has. Crystal, if you'd like to add any clarification on that, you're more than welcome to. And so with that, at this point, I think we'll go ahead and move forward on to our next agenda item. And under new business, we have an executive session scheduled with our legal team. And so at this point, we will, I will entertain a motion for that, and the board will go into executive session on a separate conferencing line and then resume on to this meeting line pending results of that executive session. So you are all welcome to stay on this Zoom line until we come back and reconvene. It should not take long for us at this point.
I'm seeing in the chat request to push the public health order item first.
It's my understanding that Pat, our legal with this executive session, needs to be finished shortly after 1:30.
Got you. Okay, great. I'll move to go and move into executive session for legal advice, including Chris Floyd. Is Katie Welter on the line? And Pat Wilson?
He's on the Zoom call. So Sarah, would you mind framing that executive session request with the state statute information referenced in there? I think it's on our agenda.
Yep, just a second. Okay, I move to go into an executive session pursuant to CRS 246402-4A, 246402-4B, and 2464EI for a conference with legal counsel for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions and to instruct negotiations in connection with a potential acquisition of temporary right of entry onto real property purportedly owned by the Union Pacific Railroad Company for purposes of surveying, testing, and assessing the property.
Second. Is there any further discussion at this point before we hop into our executive session call? Commissioner Glenn, do you have the correct information to jump into that call?
Yeah, well, I have to disconnect from this call and start the process over again.
Okay, we'll wait for you to get in. So
Yes.
with that and no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Commissioner Glenn hopped off before we could finish that vote. Okay, so we will hop into our executive session and be back. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'll get that up.
Okay, and I think we're just waiting for, oh, Commissioner Glenn, you're here. You're 3592, is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome, okay. Wonderful. We moved to come out of executive session at 1:48 p.m. Okay, Katie, if you'd like to take it at this point.
Sure. I'd just like to certify that the topics just discussed in executive session were limited to specific legal advice pertaining to legal questions related to potentially acquiring a right of entry onto the Union Pacific owned property on Harrison Avenue.
Okay.
We can then open for public discussion. The resolution, I'm not sure if the resolution has a number yet.
2020-10, I believe, is what Patty had assigned to it.
Okay. 2020-10, which is a resolution authorizing negotiations, purchase, and exercise of the county's powers of eminent domain to acquire a temporary right of entry for the purpose of conducting investigations and testing of certain real property. And I just, as a point of clarification, want to make it very clear that this resolution does not authorize the acquisition or taking of the property. It authorizes myself and other legal counsel to pursue a temporary right of entry onto the property alone for the purpose of conducting due diligence on the site to determine its feasibility as a site for future county use, including possibly a justice center.
Thank you, Katie.
So at this point, are there any comments on the resolution at this point? If you'll raise your hand in the chat screen, so we will be able to call on you, that'd be great. Chris, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, ma'am. I think Katie handled it very well.
Commissioner Glenn, do you have anything at this point?
I have nothing.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 2, it is the actual resolution itself, Resolution 2020-10, to authorize negotiations, purchase, and exercise of county's powers of eminent domain to acquire a temporary right of entry to conduct investigations and testing of certain real property.
I'll move to approve resolution 2020-10.
Okay. I will second that. Further discussion at this point of the motion on the table by the board. Commissioner Glenn?
No, I have nothing.
I'd like to just clarify in anyone interested in reading through the resolution outlining the steps and the intent of the process, as Katie also touched on. This is to get a temporary right of entry so that we can do the diligence necessary to completely assess the site and make a final determination on whether or not it rises as a priority or an ideal site for the Justice Center. We've done this in response to public request and also very thorough vetting of other sites that may or may not have been suitable. We do this with the idea to be cost efficient. There's many other costs that maybe are not apparent to folks in the public in infrastructure. And so when we weigh acquisition costs or the cost of accessibility for the public to utilize the Justice Center if and when construction were to happen. We weigh the cost of postponing construction. It's my opinion that, you know, this is not something that is going to go away, this need of a new jail and the liability that it poses on the county. Even though COVID, we are in the midst of COVID, you know, we still have a job to do in maintaining long-term and strategic planning for this project, in my opinion. And so also, I guess, let's see, sorry, I was looking at the list. The site will be tested and also mitigated properly for any use that we might determine is appropriate.
Commissioner Glenn, do you have anything?
No?
Okay. So seeing that no further discussion at this point, we do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Katie, for taking the time to join us for that today. We'd love if you would stay on if you have the time. Totally up to you. So with that, we will move into item number 3, which is the annual operating plan for Colorado Fire Prevention and Control. Sarah and our emergency operations manager, Kaylee Ham, I believe have additional information on this. Kaylee, can you just walk us through what this is quickly?
I am trying to pull this up. I apologize. Ay, ay, ay. I don't know if Kaylee's
There
on
we
here.
go.
Oh, is
Okay.
she?
I think
We
I
can
finally
hear you.
muted myself, sorry. Yeah, well, Sarah's pulling that up. Basically, every spring, we adopt a new annual operating plan through the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. And we also work with our partners for the Forest Service. We do it in conjunction with JP just because we're so similar. And we'd be helping each other if we had a fire. But this pretty much outlines how we will fight fire. So the commissioner is typically present, as well as our sheriff as the fire warden, and then also our fire chief. So some of the biggest things it points out is just, you know, our general landscape and federal land versus county land, and secures our agreement that we will help provide fire suppression on Forest Service land a mile into their jurisdiction, and then they will provide assistance a mile into our jurisdiction. And then the best sheet that's in this plan is what we call kind of the Christmas sheet, or I guess this year it kind of transitioned to a stoplight, and it just really outlines what resources are available and for how long. So fighting fire is done in operational periods, just like what we're in now for a pandemic. They're typically 12 hours, and this plan really tells us what we can order and how long it's free for, which we really appreciate. So for example, it outlines the MMA, which is our multi-mission aircraft, and that we can order that immediately, and the process to do so, and to make sure that it's covered, whether by state or federal, and for how long. And the sheriff signs as well as the commissioner. Do you have anything else to add, Sarah?
I don't. I just pulled up the page here with the preamble and the purpose, which summarizes everything that you mentioned. I will say that it has, I think this is one of a few things on a list to revisit and work through, you know, more specifically as a document when we do have the time, just to be sure that we because it looks like it was amended in 2013, extended through 2018, and then 2020. It's probably something on the list of our plan revisions.
Yeah. I think the only big thing that changed was that, and I'm not sure which page it is, but the quote unquote Christmas sheet on what we can order. In our meeting in February, that's what Brenda, who is our battalion chief, there it is. That was the big change, and typically is the biggest change.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
And
Commissioner Glenn, do you have any questions on this?
No.
I'll make a motion to ratify the adoption of the annual operating plan through, is it through the end of the year, Kaylee? Are we through 2020, December 2020?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then we'll revisit again this time next year.
Second. There's a motion on the floor for the ratification and adoption of the annual operating plan through Colorado Fire Prevention and Control through 2020. Is there any further discussion at this point from the board? Commissioner Glenn?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Mudge?
Nope.
Okay. Nothing from me. So at this point, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Kaylee, for helping us through that and for having that available to us, Commissioner Mudge. At this point, we'll go ahead and move into our added new business, which is the pending new public health order number 4. I think we kind of wanted to talk through this. Kaylee and Colleen and Beth, if you'd like to start off talking through this, that'd be fantastic. I think just to kind of frame it a little bit, kind of talk about what the new public health order is going to look like, what our thresholds are, frame some of those questions, or maybe just answer some of those questions and what we can expect from a new coming public health order and when that public health order will be released.
So hello, everyone. This is Colleen, the Director of Lake County Public Health Agency, and I am going to try to do my best as to kind of update folks. If we really want to do the quick and dirty of what it might look like, basically, we are looking to extend our order and also looking at what the governor announced this week. Maybe that's a better way to start it. I apologize. I wasn't anticipating speaking right now, but the piece of the puzzle, Governor on Monday had announced that we are going to move out of stay at home and go into what he is calling safer at home. And so it is basically, opening up is not the right word. It is like cracking the door and taking a peek to see what businesses we might be able to do in the next couple of weeks. So when I said the quick and dirty, basically our Lake County order stands, and the only changes that are going to be made here in Lake County are we will follow the governor's orders and allow some of the personal services, like you can go get a haircut, you can go get your nails done, you can go get your dog groomed, kind of a piece. And that doesn't happen until May 1st. So we have not received guidance from the state yet. It will not be released until Monday. And so with that, it sounds like there's this big new, super exciting, we're gonna do, we're opening up the state, and that's not really the case. And the reason is we don't have enough information to feel comfortable that, there are decreasing cases there, that if there was to be a surge, if the healthcare, within our state can handle it. So this is just kind of taking a look to see if we can loosen up a little bit on our social distancing pieces, what that looks like. And if we start to see an increase in cases, or we're finding that the hospital systems are starting to get more full and we don't want to obviously max them out, we would have to actually go backwards to safe at home. So a lot of what he's proposing still relies on people social distancing. It's staying 6 feet apart. It's wearing a cloth covering over your mouth and nose in public. It's limiting gatherings to 10 or less. It's talking about, which we have talked about, recreating locally. Majority of our surrounding counties are not asking for folks to come there. They're asking people to stay out of their county. We have extended that language as well, in the sense of not wanting folks to come in and overwhelm our system. There's signage now that's out on our trailheads that's talking about, you are your own search and rescue, because we don't want to have an increase in the amount of people in Lake County and not having the ability to, manage everyone on top of, COVID-19 at this point in time. That's kind of my quick. I can talk more as I have questions. It'll be easier for me to kind of understand where some folks are at or what their questions are.
Thanks, Colleen. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I think I seem to have a bad habit of doing that in these virtual Zoom meetings.
Okay, I think it's just more of, should I start sharing my screen? Should I walk everyone through the Colorado roadmap into new normal with another meeting?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think right now, really, are there folks on the call that have questions in relation to the planning going into this next public health order and what it means? If you do, can you please raise your hand in the chat, and we will call on you to be able to give you an opportunity to speak. Kaylee and Beth, at this point, do you have anything to add to anything that Colleen has said?
I don't know if Beth has.
Sorry, it took a while. No, I think what Colleen said is getting any questions that we can address specifically. And Sarah, I don't know if you wanted me to mention the dashboard now in terms of this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my comments would really just be reiterating kind of some of my opening comments about the continued effort to organize the communication and the information. We realize that through the reopening, quote unquote reopening, we need to be really thoughtful about defining that and making sure that the expectations are clear to both community members, public, visitors, and business owners, because there are some businesses that could get up and operating without opening doors to the public again. So in the conversations that should be happening over the next few days, I think we're going to develop at least a few teams who can be assigned to be vetting and taking those calls and pushing out that communication and working one-on-one with businesses, with especially those large employers, I would think, to really work through how they can plan for operations to resume to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I think we're constantly trying to navigate all these changes in communication. As you all know, Beth has joined the team as a PIO, and it's been just a powerhouse in pulling together a community sit rep, which is a situation report. So we're trying to use that as a one-stop shop, as well as a dashboard through a GIS software, but it is kind of functioning as a website, and I just reached out to Rob a bit ago to make sure that we can start sharing that as a resource as well. Again, it kind of reflects the sit rep that is being worked on, but for folks that are not on Facebook, which we rely heavily on our Facebook pages, also that LCOAM page in smaller emergencies for sure. So we're just trying to coordinate all of that and get it into one good spot. So we're hearing the concerns from the public on what information is missing and what information is hard to get to. And I think, as Sarah said, that recovery team will be huge. And in reference to getting the information to the business owners, I was just telling this to Colleen that this is an after action item for sure, is that we just need a all business or private industry that's in Lake County needs to be on one single distribution list. Because you know, we know that we're missing some people when we're still sending stuff out, and it's just a little difficult. So maybe we can build that now to move forward as all that information changes. But I'll defer back
Kaylee,
to Colleen and Beth. Go ahead.
Sorry, Kaylee, I didn't mean to cut you off. So I think this would be a great opportunity, since we have some of our folks on the line that might be impacted by this new safer at home order coming from the state. If we could maybe use this as an opportunity to speak through some of that clarification, so that we can say, hey, the safer at home order is different from the stay at home order in regards to X, Y, and Z. You know, I do know, adding to Beth's comment in the chat, that Kaylee and Colleen are doing an amazing job, given the lack of clarity coming from the governor's office, that has been increasingly frustrating for all of us, because we are seeing information released from the governor's office through our connections and our legislative activist groups after that information has already been put out into the public. And so we don't have time to prepare and be ahead of the curve in that respect. So even though the safer at home order starts on April 27th, we won't have any guidance on how to regulate or tailor our public health orders until April 27th, when the guidance is released on the same day that the order takes effect. And so I think that's kind of difficult for us to really understand what the state's going to put in there when we really have no idea. Colleen, you might be able to speak to that a little bit better as well.
Yes, so the order has come out from the governor. There's just no guidance around it. And there was a slide deck that I shared with all the businesses, or at least to the folks that I was hoping to reach out to businesses to kind of show what that looks like. So anything that might be, you know, in this next phase as a opportunity to kind of phase in as far as reopening would not happen. So no haircut, no tattoo, no, you know, dental until May 1st. So it gives us a couple of days to work with those different folks to say, hey, this is a guidance that comes down from the state. We agree with it. It should be noted that we do not have to follow what the state does, in the sense of we can have the ability to keep it more strict. And I do see a question in the chat that I'll read out loud, just so I can address that. And it says from Andrew that the lodging community needs more guidance on how long the ban will continue. The majority of Colorado establishments never close, lodging establishments never close, is the guidance that it will be extended through May. We have to be able to communicate with our guests. And so obviously asking us to reconsider that we should not be going past the April 30th bans. I will just answer that question to Andrew, is we are extending that out to May 31st. We've been working very closely with our community, mountain community, and I-70 corridor. So currently Lake County is extending no lodging except for people that are working locally. So workforce, contractors coming in, that kind of piece. We don't have enough information to definitively say that we don't have, that we have a, so I'm just looking at the criteria, and I apologize, I know that folks don't have this in front of them. But one of the things that it talks about is the fact that we need to have a sustained decrease in cases for at least 14 days to even make some considerations. And every day we're getting more and more positives. finally have the ability to test anyone who's symptomatic at this point in time. So obviously that means that we'll get a better handle on where we're at. And that's part of it, is putting the brakes on that. So Summit County has extended out to May 31st. Gunnison County is going to extend out to May 31st. Chaffey County is extending out to May 31st. I can't speak to Eagle because they're ahead of the curve because of where they're at, but this isn't just Lake County, and it really is because we don't have the ability. If we were to pretty much double our community at this point and we have large disease spread, we will not be able to handle that. It will overwhelm our healthcare system. We won't have the ability to transfer people out as needed, and we probably will see fatalities. And that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to break that chain of transmission. And please know that these are not easy decisions being made or willy-nilly. We are looking at the data, and we want to, if we can definitively say, hey, you know what? We haven't seen an increase in 14 days. You know what? Our hospitals can handle it. Everyone who's sick is getting tested. We're able to monitor everyone and tell people, hey, you're sick. You need to stay home and isolate. And if you've been exposed to someone who's sick, you need to stay home and quarantine for 14 days. And we also need to make sure that people are still following social distancing. Like, this isn't, like I said, we're not even opening the door. We're cracking the door and taking a peek and see what happens. And like I said, the only, changes coming down are, dental and personal services. Everything else remains closed at this point in time. And we did, I should add, we did send a tool out to our businesses in the anticipation of, hey, can we open that door a little bit wider, and let's be prepared. So say we have really good numbers for the next 2 weeks, we can reconsider where we're at and be like, you know what, we've seen, what your social distancing plan is, and you can physically open your doors, because right now that's not the case. And so that's why we sent out a tool, so that we can be prepared and ready, and to have people understand that that's the new normal. Like, there's no going back to what we thought. Like, there's not, big gatherings or anything else like that, that this is our new normal, and social distancing is a piece of that.
Thanks, Colleen. I also think, just to add to a couple of your points, I mean, we've talked about canceling any special events through June. Even the campgrounds and designated camping areas is closed through May 31st. We realize the impact on the economy and the struggle, but we have to, and as Andrew also mentions in here, and Colleen mentioned, Eagle County is submitting a waiver to expedite this, because they have they have had preparation since January, and do have the financial and supply resources to be able to meet the criteria that is set forth in some of those guiding documents. And that being said, that's a whole nother thing for us to have to monitor, which I don't mean to make it sound like that's a burden, but it's just another consideration of the amount of folks that are not going to work, but will be going to work and commuting back and forth. It's opening up that exposure, and we don't yet know how that is going to impact us. And so we do need to take these things incrementally. We do need to be able to say to folks and share the information and be very transparent of our abilities and our resources if and when we do start getting opening up to visitors. But we simply don't have the same resources as neighboring, as Eagle County.
And I will share, Sarah, like, Eagle is not open for tourists. They are only
Right.
trying to open the economy up a little bit, and they're not going past what is being said in this safer, at home order. It's still the same thing. You're gonna get to go get your hair cut, your job groomed, and go to the dentist, and they're only looking to open it up for locals to stimulate that. And they might have the ability to kind of physically open a few doors, but at the same time, it is not this major, they're open, if you will. So that has to be recognition there as well. Like, Eagle is not carte blanche open at all, and they're only doing it for locals specifically.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I do have a question to that, in that respect, Colleen. as well, because I think Andrew's point is well taken of, you know, the amount of our workforce that travels and what amount of that 70% of workforce that travels has been already consistently traveling because they're considered an essential worker. Do we have that data? And I had read in the Denver Post yesterday that like the hospital situation in Eagle does not currently have any patients or has one patient admitted with COVID. And so is there a partnership between us and them, you know, of if we hit capacity through this safer at home transition, what does that look like in partnership with those hospitals? What does that all look like?
Yeah, so to speak on the hospital piece, right? And yes, people have been traveling back and forth, but now we know more folks are going to be traveling, and we have to make sure that we're holding our resources for our own. A lot will happen in the next 2 weeks and tell us whether or not we can continue to successfully social distance and our numbers aren't changing, and then we can have bigger, broader conversations of, hey, it's looking good, let's start opening it up. But we're all dependent on each other in Colorado in the sense of, you know, transporting patients and things like that. And so we do, you know, every hospital has relationships across the state. We can go west, we can go east as far as transferring patients. And right now, you know, Val feels confident that because, I mean, you have to understand they've had, you know, like positive results in the triple digits. Like we're at, like, I believe we're up to 10 at this point. And actually, you know, I'll just tell you, we're actually up to 12. That should be reported by the end of the day. It hasn't hit the state yet, but we know that for a fact. And so my point is, you know, we have 12 cases to go off of. They have hundreds and they have tested thousands of people. And we have tested less than 100. So my point for data speaking, like we don't have enough information to feel confident that we know how the tests, or excuse me, how the spread of disease is going and whether or not we've actually peaked and spiked. And I think the next 2 weeks will be telling because more people will be moving just locally back and forth as some of those other non-essential businesses might, you know, look for some of our workers here, kind of a thing. And I think that's important to note. Like, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens, and that's really hard. And I think that's the hardest part, right? It's like a wait and see. Like we don't have all of the answers or a definitive date or a definitive, like, right, in the next 2 weeks, maybe a treatment comes out, right? Something could totally change, you know, change dramatically that we consider. And that's the beauty of like what we're doing. We're not making this and thinking like, we're not going to make a decision until May 31st. We're not going to revisit it. We're, you know, this is flexible. We're going to be looking at it and seeing, you know, what data we're coming in. Like I said, just this week, our county, you know, both with Rocky Mountain Family Practice and St. Vincent has the ability to test everyone who's symptomatic. That wasn't available to us prior. We finally have some movement in the supply chain, get some of those supplies that we haven't had in the past. And I think that's really great for us. So I do recognize once again how tough it is, but there's, like I said, it's a moving target at this point in time.
So Colleen, should things change rapidly then in the next 2 weeks and we're at a point where, you know, because now we have the capacity to test everyone through St. Vincent's, through our partnership with St. Vincent's and Rocky Mountain Family Practice, and things do change, would there be the potential for the public health order then to, I mean, if it changes in a positive way, to reel that May 31st date back? What would that look like? Or how would those changes be communicated to the business community?
No, I think that's great. I mean, the reality is it takes us 2 weeks just to get data and information and testing results for us to even make a decision. And that's why we're pushing it out to May 31st. So we might have some great information by, you know, May 20th. And if we feel confident, you know, we might pull it back, but it's just a matter of modifying the order. Like that's an easy piece. The hard piece is really determining what's happening in our community. And it should be noted that if we do all of this testing and we have, you know, a lot of negatives, that means that that disease is not here yet in the scheme of it all, or at least how we think that it's here, if that makes sense. I see folks like thinking about like, what do you mean? Like in the sense of, hey, if everyone we test is negative, that doesn't mean that we're amazing and we, don't have it. It means that we haven't been exposed, so we have no idea how it's going to act in our community in that respect. Obviously, we have some positives at this point in time, and so it is, let's look at the data and see what happens. We always have the flexibility to change things. Unfortunately, to get the information we need, it's going to take a couple of weeks to really have a good picture of what's happening.
If I can also comment, I mean, we're putting a new public health order in to providing documentation for everybody's preparation for the continued steps and phases and meeting the criteria and continuing to use precautions. So the work will start very soon and be dispersed to everyone, and everybody can start getting prepared and making changes and improvements in order to meet the different levels of criteria. So everyone will be working with those few documents that were compiled that should be getting sent out through the city, the chamber, and whatnot, through our business community. And we will be working again to create those small task groups to address large employers, small business owners, and continue the conversation one-on-one with folks to work through getting to a point of meeting, of hitting those criteria. I do have a raised hand, RJ Bartolas.
I have a question for nonprofits. It seems that nothing's been talked about nonprofits. But my question is like the Eagles Lodge and the Elks Lodge was nonprofit, and the gatherings are usually less than 10. Are they allowed to actually open up even though they're classified as a bar?
That's a really great question. And I would say no at this point, in the sense of, we don't have the ability to know that. How are you limiting it to 10? And that can be an offline conversation. And maybe that is a good idea to send out. I don't know if the protocol, like the social distancing protocol tool, excuse me, is going out to those folks, like the Eagles, the Elks. I'm imagining they are, because anyone with a business license should be receiving this protocol. So until we know that that's a safe thing to happen, but yes, you cannot consume drinks on site. So I think, right there, it's a no. I obviously I'm talking off the cuff right now, but when I think about that, like, do you need to physically be in the space and have 10 people? Are you really not going to, have food and or, beverages on site, and everyone's 6 feet apart, wearing a face covering? Like, there's a lot of parameters to do this well.
Okay, I got you. So my question is too, has anybody decided anything on a race series then? Since the governor says it's 250 people gathering, what is actually going to happen to the Leadville race series then?
And so right now, the governor's order actually is only allowing group gatherings of 10. So that 250, I'm not sure where you're pulling that, but if you're looking at some of the guidance documents, that means that, so that means that at least 4 months have passed and we have no significant increase across the state in cases. And so that is months out. I think we are having that conversation right now as far as special events. And as you can imagine, it's not looking promising in this view at all.
Okay, thanks.
Ron, this is Commissioner Marcella. And Colleen, I just had a question for both of you. Kind of adding to Ron's point about those nonprofits like the Eagles and the Elks. Did that business questionnaire document get sent to those organizations as well?
I have no control over the listserv. We asked our partners who do business licensing. Obviously, we did all the retail food licensing pieces to get that. And I think that speaks back to Kaylee's point, is that we don't have one listserv. So basically, it is a little quilt work of, hey, did you get it? Why didn't you get it? Why aren't you on that list? Or, oh, my email changed, right? There's a lot of pieces to it. So I would have to check to see what list, if you will, like in quotes, that those entities might live on. I mean, obviously for us, we know retail food, it might be us, but I don't know at the same time. And that's that offhand.
Okay. Ron, if you didn't get a copy of that, I think we can definitely coordinate getting something to you guys up at the Eagles Lodge so that you have that information as well.
I think the president actually just received an email that said that we had to shut down, which we did. But I mean, with the new limit of 10 people, and the amount of people that I know goes into Eagles on a daily basis is anywhere from 4 to 6 people during the week. On a weekend, they might get 20. That's why I was wondering, you could actually social distance within the Elks and the Eagles by the 6-foot distance. Even though if you were sitting at a bar, you could move the stools 8 foot apart, because you usually only have anywhere from 5 to 10 people during the week if you're lucky. That's why I was wondering if they thought of anything of making it non-exempt, since, you know.
Right, but bars are closed, so it would be if you wanted to physically meet and have a conversation, not to actually be at the bar.
I understand working.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I apologize. I was like,
No,
because I've been to those establishments, and I totally appreciate the social, parameter that it provides, and I do miss that piece as well.
Right, and I understand it's a bar atmosphere, but there is a lot of stuff that goes on the side that we can't even basically meet to like give money to people, or us figure out how we're going to get money now that Boom Days is closed to pay our our insurance for the rest of the year. I mean, with Boom Days being closed and us not being able to have the softball events, I mean, we lose $10,000 just in that weekend from that event. And that covers all of our insurance for the whole year, because we only have a total of 160 members. Out of them members, 100 of them are ladies, you know? So that's all I was just wondering.
Ron, I think though that you bring up a good point, because we had heard that Boom Days was doing some events tailored to locals, so scaling that down a whole bunch. So Colleen, do we have any information on what that looks like yet? I don't know if that softball tournament is rolled into that Boom Days special event permit. Are those just some logistical things that we would have to work through with the actual event permit when it comes in?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the picture, both locally and the state looks like, in the sense of, by August, we might be in a really good trajectory, and we might be like, hey, we can hold this piece, with 25 to 50 people, but we can't, hold an actual Boom Day event. Like I said, a lot of things are moving and changing, and it's really hard to say anything definitively. I don't want to be like, everything's off the table versus some major things positive, right? I always want to go in a positive direction. Everything's looking really good, and man, we got to handle it. And oh my gosh, the supply chain opened up, and everyone's doing great social distancing, and we have more opportunities come August. But unfortunately, it's a wait and see. Let's see how we get, through mid-May and see where our numbers are and what's happening. It's really hard to project out at this point in time, as everyone is aware, in the sense of how fast and quickly the information, the science, everything is changing daily.
Thanks, Colleen. Does everybody feel like at this point they have their questions answered? I think, kind of speaking to Beth's point, we should have some more clarity next week when some more of that guidance comes out from the state, and see how things are changing with our regional partners within the next couple days while the state prepares to transition to that safer at home model. So Ron, I would definitely encourage you to continue to call in or email us or call us with any questions or anything that you might have, so that we can keep you guys informed to what's going on as well. So if you have anything, if you have a pen and paper handy, I'd be happy to give you my cell phone number so that we can keep providing you with some updates.
Okay.
Okay. My cell phone is 719-293-0794.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate you joining us and asking those questions. Thanks for
Yes,
coming.
thank you, Ron. I apologize. I think maybe you guys have better control. If I was like, in the Elks or the Eagles, it'd be very hard for me to be there and not want to belly up to the bar.
I gotcha. Thanks.
I think, I know we're trying to get off and we have an elected officials and director meeting that started 4 minutes ago, but I just want to say again, this is something that everybody has recognized, but being sure to have a comprehensive list of everybody who needs to get this information. And once this information then goes out, I think everybody will be a little better level set and understand, or at least start to understand where they fit into the executive and public health orders, and be able to reach out with more specific questions that gives them some tasks to comply moving forward.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Let's go ahead and move on then into reports, minutes, bills, and payroll. We have the public trustee report for the first quarter of 2020 and bills and payroll for the pay period ending April 10th, 2020. I will make a motion that we approve the public trustee report for the first quarter 2020 and bills and payroll for the pay period ending April 10th, 2020.
Second.
All right. With that, is there any further discussion? Commissioner Glenn, do you have any discussion on those items?
No, I don't.
Okay. Seeing that there's a motion on the floor, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And with that, we will adjourn our regular and special county commissioner meeting at 2:36 p.m. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.